poor single mom saves a lost old black man, unaware he's a billionaire who'll change her life forever. Before we dive into this incredible story of kindness and fate, take a moment to let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more heartwarming tales to life. The world had shrunk to the four peeling walls of apartment 2B, a space made smaller still by the cold that seeped through the window frames. Outside, the blizzard raged, a howling white fury that had already buried the town of Havenwood under a 2-foot shroud. Inside, Elara held her 6-year-old son, Leo, a little closer, sharing the thin blanket and the last of her body heat. The only light came from a single, bare bulb that flickered with the strained rhythm of a dying heart, casting long, dancing shadows that looked like grasping fingers. On the small kitchen table, beneath the unsteady light, lay the eviction notice. Its stark, red letters were a final, screaming testament to her failure. Final notice. The words were a brand on her soul. Her hands, chapped and worn from scrubbing floors at the diner that had laid her off 2 weeks ago, trembled as she traced the edge of the paper. She had nothing left. The pantry held a half-empty box of crackers and a single can of tomato soup. Her savings were a memory. Her husband, taken by a sudden illness 2 years prior, had left her with nothing but a locket, Leo's bright eyes, and a mountain of quiet grief. Hope was a currency she could no longer afford. The flickering of the bulb overhead was a cruel metaphor for the last ember of it dying in her chest. It was in this suffocating silence, broken only by the wind's mournful song and the unsteady pulse of the light, that a knock echoed through the apartment. It was a soft, hesitant sound, almost lost in the storm's cacophony. Leo stirred in her arms, his small face etched with worry. "Who's that, Mama?" he whispered. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. It could be Mr. Finch, the landlord, coming early to gloat, or perhaps a neighbor needing shelter. But no one in this building ever checked on one another. They were all islands of quiet desperation. With a deep breath that did little to steady her, she gently set Leo on the threadbare couch and walked to the door. When she pulled it open, the wind tore at her, forcing a blast of icy air and stinging snow into the room. Framed in the doorway was a man she had never seen before. He was old, his face a roadmap of deep lines, his dark skin dusted with a fine layer of snow that clung to his eyebrows and the collar of his thin, worn coat. He clutched a simple wooden cane, his knuckles white. He wasn't looking at her, but past her, his eyes clouded with a deep, disoriented confusion. He seemed to shrink under the force of the blizzard, a fragile figure against the world's wrath. For a fleeting moment, the town's ingrained suspicion of strangers whispered in Elara's ear, "Lock the door. Protect what little you have." But then she looked into his eyes again and saw not a threat, but a profound and weary vulnerability. She saw a fellow human being at the mercy of the storm. "Can I help you?" Her voice was soft, barely a whisper against the wind. The old man blinked slowly, focusing on her face. I think I'm lost," he murmured, his voice raspy with cold. "My car broke down. I was looking for the old mill road. There was no old mill road on this side of town." He was miles off course. Every rational thought told her to send him away, to direct him to the town shelter, which was surely full by now anyway. She had 1 can of soup, 1 thin blanket, an eviction notice that promised homelessness by morning. What could she possibly offer? And yet, her heart refused to listen to reason. She saw her own father in his tired posture, her own loneliness in his lost expression. She couldn't turn him away. It wasn't in her nature. "Come in," she said, opening the door wider. "Please, come in out of the cold." The man looked at her, a flicker of surprise and then immense gratitude warming his weary features. He stepped inside, bringing the scent of winter and wet wool with him. Elara settled the man, who introduced himself simply as Silas, into the only sturdy chair she owned. She took his damp coat and hung it near the rattling radiator, then wrapped the blanket from her own shoulders around his. "It's not much," she apologized, gesturing to the sparse room. But it's warm. Silas simply nodded, his dark, intelligent eyes taking everything in. The bare walls, the eviction notice on the table, the way Leo peeked at him from behind the couch. He said nothing of her poverty, offered no pity, only a quiet, dignified respect that felt more warming than the blanket. Alara went to the kitchen and opened her last can of soup. She heated it on the stove, dividing the meager portion into 2 bowls, one for Leo and one for their guest. She would go without. It was a choice she didn't even have to think about. As she handed the steaming bowl to Silas, their hands brushed. She saw the deep calluses on his palms, the worn strength in his fingers. They were hands that had known work, hands like her own. He accepted the soup with a quiet, "Thank you, ma'am," and ate slowly, as if savoring not just the food, but the kindness behind it. A fragile peace settled in the small room, a temporary truce with the storm outside and the bigger storm brewing in Alara's life. They sat in a comfortable silence, 3 souls huddled together against the cold, sharing what little warmth they had. The peace was shattered by a sudden, aggressive pounding on the door that made them all jump. This was not the hesitant knock of a lost traveler. This was the sound of angry entitlement. Alara's blood ran cold. She knew who it was, Mr. Finch. She opened the door to the landlord's sneering face. He was a large man whose physical bulk was matched only by the smallness of his spirit. His eyes immediately fell on Silas, who was sitting quietly in the chair. A cruel smirk twisted his lips. Well, Alara," Finch began, his voice dripping with condescension. "Can't pay your rent, but you're running a charity for every vagrant who wanders by? Is that what my money is paying for?" The comment was laced with a casual racism that made Alara's stomach clench. "He was lost in the storm," she said, her voice tight. "His car broke down," Finch scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "I don't care about his sob story, and I don't care about yours. I'm here to remind you that you have until 9 a.m. tomorrow, not a minute later. Then you and your guest are out on the street where you belong." He gave Silas one last contemptuous look before turning and slamming the door, leaving a wake of cold dread behind him. Alara leaned against the door, the fight draining out of her. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and shameful. She had failed. Tomorrow she and Leo would be homeless in the middle of a blizzard. She turned back to the room, expecting to see pity or judgment in Silas's eyes. Instead, she found only a deep, unnerving calm. He had watched the entire exchange without a word, his expression unreadable. When their eyes met, he finally spoke, his voice soft but resonant. "That man has no honor." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. He then looked at her, his gaze gentle but piercing. "My mother raised 6 children in a room smaller than this," he said, his voice a low rumble. "She'd share her last crust of bread with a stranger. She used to say that a person's true wealth isn't what they have in their pocket, but what they have in their heart." He paused, his eyes drifting to the eviction notice. "You have so little." He was right about that. "Why did you let me in?" Alara wiped a tear from her cheek, her voice thick with emotion but firm with conviction. "Because no one deserves to be left out in the cold," she said simply. "Because you needed help. It's what people are supposed to do for each other." A slow, genuine smile spread across Silas's face. It transformed him, chasing away the weariness and revealing a powerful warmth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple, smooth black stone, polished by time and touch. He pressed it into her hand. "My mother gave me this when I left home. She said it would always guide me toward good people. I think she'd want you to have it now." Alara closed her fingers around the stone. It was cool to the touch, but a strange warmth seemed to emanate from it, a small anchor in the swirling chaos of her life. Just then, with a final, pathetic flicker, the light bulb overhead died completely, plunging the apartment into near-total darkness. The radiator gave a final, gurgling sigh and fell silent. The power was out. Leo let out a small whimper of fear. The cold, which had been a persistent guest, now became an aggressive intruder, seeping into their very bones. Without a word, Alara moved with practiced resolve. She found the 2 emergency candles she kept in a drawer and lit them, their small flames pushing back the oppressive dark. She gathered the last of her firewood, 3 small logs she'd been saving for the morning, and placed them in the rusty grate of the unused fireplace. Soon, a small but determined fire was crackling, casting a warm, golden glow on their faces. It was a pitiful defense against the blizzard, but it was all she had. She pulled the couch closer to the hearth and bundled Leo and Silas in every blanket and spare piece of clothing she could find. She herself sat on the cold floor, closer to the flames, feeding the fire piece by piece to make it last. To distract his son from the fear and the cold, she began to tell him a story, her voice a soothing melody against the howling wind. It was a tale of a brave knight who protected his kingdom not with a sword, but with acts of kindness. Silas watched her, his expression one of profound contemplation. He saw not a defeated woman on the verge of ruin, but a queen in a collapsing castle, using her last resources to protect her people. He saw an integrity so pure and unwavering it was almost blinding. In that dark, cold room, warmed by a dying fire, he saw the rarest and most valuable treasure in the world. As dawn broke, the storm finally exhausted itself, leaving behind a world of pristine, silent white. The fire had long since died, and the cold in the apartment was biting. Silas rose stiffly from the chair. "The storm has passed," he said, his voice filled with a quiet finality. "I must be on my way." Illyra nodded, a hollow feeling in her chest. The brief, strange interlude was over. Reality was waiting for her on the other side of the door. "Thank you, Illyra," Silas said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. His touch was surprisingly firm. "For everything, the soup, the fire, your kindness will not be forgotten. I promise you." That he gave Leo a soft pat on the head and, with a final, meaningful look at Illyra, he walked out the door and disappeared into the bright, snow-covered landscape. She was alone again, with nothing but an eviction notice, an empty pantry, and the smooth, black stone in her pocket. The clock on the wall read 8:15 a.m. Mr. Finch would be there soon. Despair, cold and absolute, washed over her. She had done the right thing, she knew, but doing the right thing was about to cost her everything. At precisely 9 a.m., the heavy tread of Mr. Finch echoed in the hallway, accompanied by the stern, official rap of the town sheriff. This was it. Illyra opened the door, her heart a leaden weight in her chest, Leo clinging to her leg. Finch wore a triumphant smirk. "Time's up, Illyra. Sheriff's here to see you out." But as the sheriff began to speak, a new sound cut through the morning quiet, the low hum of powerful engines. A procession of sleek, black cars, their chrome glittering in the winter sun, pulled up in front of the rundown apartment building. They moved with a silent, intimidating grace that was utterly alien to Havenwood. Doors opened in unison, and a team of men and women in sharp, expensive suits stepped out. A poised, elegantly dressed woman approached the building, her heels clicking on the cleared pavement. She walked directly to Illyra, ignoring Finch and the sheriff completely. "Illyra Vance?" she asked, her voice crisp and professional. Illyra nodded numbly. The woman smiled warmly. "My name is Ms. Davenport. I am Mr. Blackwood's chief of staff. He has sent me with this." She handed Illyra a thick, leather-bound portfolio. Inside was the deed to the entire apartment building, signed over to her name. "Mr. Blackwood has also acquired the controlling interest in the mortgage company that holds this town's paper. As of this morning, your debt, and the debt of every tenant in this building, has been forgiven." Finch's jaw dropped. His face went from ruddy to a pasty white. "Blackwood? Silas Blackwood? The billionaire?" Ms. Davenport's smile didn't waver. "The very same. He was very impressed with the hospitality he received in your establishment." Before Finch could sputter a response, a large moving truck pulled up, and a crew began unloading beautiful, brand-new furniture. Another vehicle delivered boxes of food, clothes, and toys for Leo. Ms. Davenport then handed Illyra another envelope. "This is the charter for the Havenwood Foundation. a new charitable organization to support families in this community. Mr. Blackwood would be honored if you would accept the position of executive director, with a generous salary and full benefits. And this, she added, producing one last document, is the paperwork for a fully funded college trust for your son, Leo. The cascade of blessings was too much to comprehend. Illyria swayed on her feet, clutching the documents as if they were life rafts. The townspeople, drawn by the commotion, had gathered outside, their faces a mixture of shock and awe. They had whispered about her poverty, judged her struggle, and now they were witnessing her impossible salvation. Just then, the lead car door opened, and Silas Blackwood stepped out. He was no longer the shivering, lost old man in a thin coat. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored cashmere overcoat, his presence radiating an aura of quiet, immense power. He walked directly to Illyria, his eyes filled with the same warmth she had seen by the firelight. "A person's true wealth," he said, his voice carrying over the silent crowd, "is in their heart, and yours, Illyria, is immeasurable." He turned to the stunned crowd and the humiliated Mr. Finch. This woman offered a stranger her last piece of bread when she was about to lose everything. She is the soul of this community, and from this day forward, she will be its guardian. He publicly thanked her, his words a balm on the years of quiet shame she had endured. He introduced her to Ms. Davenport and the rest of his team, not as employees, but as partners. In that moment, surrounded by the stunned faces of her neighbors and the genuine respect of these powerful strangers, Illyria was no longer the town's charity case. She was its hero. Her quiet act of decency had been shouted from the rooftops, her integrity vindicated for all to see. 6 months later, the light in apartment 2B was no longer a single, flickering bulb. It was a warm, steady glow from a beautiful chandelier that illuminated a home filled with laughter and love. The peeling paint was gone, replaced by warm, cheerful colors. The pantry was always full. Illyria, now the respected head of the Blackwood Foundation, had transformed Havenwood. She'd established a food bank, an after-school program for children, and a crisis fund for families facing eviction, ensuring no one would ever have to endure the desperation she had known. Her worn hands were now busy signing checks that gave others a second chance, her compassion now backed by the resources to make a real difference. Tonight, she, Leo, and Silas, whom Leo now affectionately called Grandpa C, were sitting down to dinner. He had become a fixture in their lives, a mentor to her and a doting grandfather to her son. They weren't connected by blood, but by something far stronger, a bond forged in a snowstorm, in an act of selfless kindness. They were a found family, built on a foundation of integrity. As Illyria looked at the two most important people in her life, she clutched the smooth, black stone in her pocket. It was a constant reminder that in the coldest, darkest moments, the smallest flame of human warmth can change the world. One simple act of kindness had not only saved her, it had saved an entire town, proving that the greatest rewards are reserved for those who give when they have nothing left. What did you think of Illyria's story? If you were moved by her incredible journey, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing this video with someone who needs a little hope today. Your kindness, like hers, can make all the difference.